Hey witches, if you are enjoying Waking Up the Witch, then you're definitely going to want to check out my magical shop, Moonbee's Wellness in Medford, Oregon. We have a curated collection of crystals, incense, sage, witchy books, tarot, oracle, and so much magic made locally here in the Rogue Valley. Whether you're just beginning your witchy path or you've been on this journey for quite a while, we have so many items to support where you are in your journey. And we ship anywhere in the US, so no need to be local. But Moonbees is more than just a shop. We are also a sacred space and supportive to your healing journey. I'm a Reiki master, and I also offer a lot of intuitive sessions, including past life readings and past life regression sessions. And all of this can be done virtually online, so I can help you no matter where you're at. Come visit us in Southern Oregon or follow Moonbees Wellness on Instagram and Moonbees_Medford on TikTok. And remember, magic's this way.
This episode of Waking Up the Witch is brought to you by Taylar Pickett Styles. I'm Taylar Pickett, and I am an intuitive hairstylist in Southern Oregon. I offer in-person services as well as online tutorials on how to care for your curly hair, how to properly shampoo your hair. If you're a hairstylist, I offer lots of education and one-on-one consulting on how to build your clientele and take care of your clients. If you're interested in any of these services, please reach out to me. There will be a link in the bio. I also offer organic hair care from Innocence Organic Beauty, and you can also buy that online through me, link in the bio, and also on my Instagram page, Taylar Pickett Styles. I also have a TikTok page if you're into just talking a little bit more deeply about things, going into deeper dives about hair care, self-love, and self-worth. My TikTok handle is Southern Oregon Curl. And don't forget, tame nothing, nourish everything. Enjoy this episode. I'm Taylar.
And I'm Amber.
And this is
Waking Up the Witch. We're your neighborhood witches. Each week, we talk about all things witchy and connect with other humans in a storytelling format about navigating life on this floating rock.
We're two curious ladies trying to understand the human experience. But while we do that, we think it's important to honor the people that lived here before us and honor the cultures and traditions that we're being inspired by.
This podcast is about waking up the witch, which means we are learning and growing every day. That being said, we are always open to feedback on how we can do better.
The views and opinions of our guests don't necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Waking Up the Witch. Now, let's go, ghouls.
Oh, hi. Hey.
I started answering work text.
We're busy ladies. So wild.
Sometimes I'm gonna have to talk on here. I'm glad that
we're doing great, honestly.
Other people talk sometimes.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and you can tell this is our second recording of the day.
I think I was worse this morning.
No, you did great.
I'm getting
really great.
I'm settling in. That also happens at work too. I'm like, oh my God, I have to fucking talk to somebody. Everyone that came in yesterday, I was like, hi, I'm not talking to you.
I need a moment of silence.
Yeah, I'm going to request a silent appointment. How are you?
I'm good. I'm full on doing my body code stuff now, which feels so great. And
hell yeah.
Yeah, I did 3 sessions yesterday, one of which was for one of our patrons. Hi, Genevieve. It was so...
I love her.
I love her too.
Friend.
I'm so grateful. Patreon is so fun and awesome, and it's just really cool to really be connecting more with people finally. It's something I think we've always craved.
Yeah, immediate best friend mode.
Yeah, and it's also kind of scary too, because it's like these new people that we don't know, that we haven't talked to, and it's like, you get nervous making new friends,
I
but
love that she's like close enough that she like could be a real person.
totally, like a real in-person friend. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. It was so cool. But yeah, that was really lovely, and like such an honor to be able to hold that space and connect in that way with her. And it's so cool, like, because I wasn't in practice mode anymore, which like I feel like even during practice, like I was like on in it, of course. Like they were very real sessions for me, but like now I'm like certified, and so that feels a little different, and I can just tell like I'm already in such a different groove than I was in my training, and just like, come on, let's get as much of
I
this
can't believe
that we
you're like
can.
doing it.
I know, it's really cool. Just naturally kind of like flown right into it out of getting certified.
Just
And
been a goal for so long.
for like so long, like way longer than I even started working on it, actually. And I think that's part of why too. It feels like so natural. It's like, okay, we're finally doing it now.
Yeah, it's just crazy when you've dreamt of something for so long and it like finally is here and
I
you're like, oh
know.
my God.
I'm so excited. And I'm really grateful because I was like setting goals for myself to do level 3, which is belief code, which is like mind blowingly amazing and helping you clear like belief systems and patterns and stuff so that you can just like be your baddest, bestest
I need
self.
it.
And it's like, it's the most expensive of the programs. And so I was like, okay, hopefully by the fall, I will have like all my money that I'm making doing body code, I could put right into that. And my aunt
For that one
surprised
too?
me and paid for that one too, like sent me money right away. And just like,
Tell your aunt I
I'm
need some money.
so grateful. I mean,
I'm just
the
kidding.
craziest thing is like she doesn't
I
have
know.
money.
I'm
It's
just
so wild to me. Like, I say that and then I feel like,
Have you given her any services?
oh yeah, she's
Okay.
like free body code for life.
Great.
Like like she's paid for all of hers that she'll ever
Yeah.
require by doing that. That's like such a huge help because it's an expensive thing. And like, I grew up like pretty poor, and like my whole family has struggles. Like it's very generational. And like she even still struggles. Like she has so much health problems and has been on disability for like so long. Like she doesn't have money to be doing that. And like you grow up with friends sometimes who just like get everything handed to them. And so like even saying it, I'm like, but I'm like, I feel like this is being handed to me in a way, and like in a way it kind of is, but it's like it's not due to anyone like having the means to do it too. So that also, I don't know, I'm just like so grateful. Like it feels so much more weighted because I know she struggles also, but like she believes in me and like believes in this work, and also desperately needs someone
Yeah.
to do that for her. It just is like this really beautiful thing. I'm like so fucking grateful because it feels so aligned, and like, fuck yeah, I'm finally doing it. And yeah, I'm just happy and grateful. So I'm going to take some time off though from like the study work mode because I like hustled so hard on top of all of the things all at once and need a little brain break from learning and practicing and just being a practitioner for a while. So my goal is still the fall, like when we kind of take our little recording break, then it's like, there's a little extra space that can open up, then I'll get into belief code then. So
Proud of you.
thank you. Yeah, that's my life. How are you? Tired? Ready for a cocktail?
I don't know.
Well, this was another fun conversation today with another amazing astrologer. I feel so lucky that we get to talk to people and just continue to like learn more about these things. And also, like, our listeners get to learn more. I hope that that's helping them too. Stuff is just so fascinating. And I love that we're having all these like pleasure conversations lately too, because I feel like that's been a huge part of my journey in the last like 6+ years, is like trying to work on shame around pleasure and trauma around pleasure and sexuality. And like, I just kind of feel still like in this like stuck energy of like, I want it so bad, but I don't know how to get there. And it's been really cool getting to talk to people in that field and who have done that work for themselves to be able to become a sex goddess myself, hopefully one day. So we hope that you enjoy this episode. Don't forget to go to patreon.com/wakingupthewitch for all the other ways to connect with us and get other content. We have like free chats over there. We're talking about all the Bravo stuff. If you watch Bravo and want to chat with us, that's a free chat. And then just also another regular Waking Up the Witch free chat. And then we have like a secret Patreon coven chat where we're talking a little bit more and we're pulling cards and we're giving advice and sharing our hearts and all sorts of other cool shit over there. So patreon.com/wakingupthewitch. Come connect with us. Come chat with us.
Yay!
And we hope you enjoy this episode.
Yay!
Taylar needs a cocktail and a nap. See ya.
See ya.
Okay, great. Let's do it then.
Okay.
You can start by closing your eyes if that feels safe and if you're in a place to do so. And let's take 3 deep grounding breaths in through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. Another deep breath in and let it go. This last one, the biggest one you've had all day, breathe in and release. We'd like to invite in our spiritual guides, our ancestors, and our higher selves to join us in holding this sacred, loving container for wisdom and connection and sharing and healing and growth. We trust that whatever is meant for the highest good to flow through this episode today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hello, hello. Please introduce yourself and whatever titles you go by. And we always ask that if you know your big 3, which I mean, you're an astrologer, so I'm sure you do.
Yes, I do. My name's Tenae Stewart. I'm the Witch of Lupine Hollow on all the places, and I am a Taurus sun, Aries
Oh my God,
moon,
yay.
Virgo rising.
Oh, hey, Virgo rising. I'm also Virgo rising.
Oh, excellent.
Well,
What is
happy
it?
season.
Happy birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you. 'Cause my birthday was actually yesterday, so
Oh my
Oh,
God, the first day.
amazing.
Love it.
Wonderful. Thanks for being with us.
thanks for having me.
So, yeah, tell us all about you and your life and how you came to be an astrologer and all the magic that you do today.
Yeah. So I first was exposed to the idea of, at the time it was like Wicca, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was the popular term, even though it wasn't. Most of us weren't really practicing Wicca, but that was the popular term. I was
Totally.
first exposed, I guess I was in middle school. So, I was like 11, 12 years old around there, and was always really interested and curious about it. I grew up, I had a really kind of like mixed upbringing. My personal family, like my actual biological family is really very agnostic in a lot of ways. My mom's family was kind of lapsed Catholic. We didn't go to church when I was a kid. And then
Sorry.
when I was 9, I guess, I started going to a Christian school, just for like educational reasons. My mom had kind of like tried homeschooling me and hated it and was like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
find something different. And so I ended up going to this Christian school for about 4 or 5 years. And so my family wasn't religious, but I had kind of like some religious exposure. And that would have been like middle school, early high school. But it was around that same time that I was also first introduced to the idea of witchcraft. And so I was really interested and curious, but didn't really even, know how to go about making that an actual, life choice until I was a
Right.
little bit older. And so I always say that I officially started practicing when I was 18. And that was when I first like started to do, kind of moon rituals, started working with the wheel of the year. Like those were the things, the seasons and the moon phases were the things that I was like most drawn to originally and are still definitely a big part of my practice. And at that time, astrology wasn't a huge part of my practice. I always really resonated with my sun sign of Taurus, but I just didn't really know anything. And then in college, so I practiced for a couple of years, really very quietly, like it was not something that I shared with people. And then when I was in college, I actually stopped practicing for a while. So for several years, I was like commuting, I was going to school, I was working, and I just found that I was very burnt out. Like I had no time. And so I really felt at a point that I wasn't really doing my practice justice, which I definitely like have different feelings about now, but it was how I felt at the time. And so I made this choice really consciously to like set my practice down. And I remember telling myself, so I would have been like 20 maybe. And I remember telling myself that, you know, if I ever came back to it, like great, like it was meant to be. And if I didn't, that that was okay. A couple of years went by and I'd really kind of gotten to the point where I felt like I wasn't going back to it.
Interesting.
And then
Was it just
in
because of being like super busy and stuff?
Yeah, I just like I didn't really have the pull to go back to it, you know. And in retrospect, I think there was a lot of ways that I never really stopped practicing. I just didn't
Right.
consider it to be enough at the time, you know. I didn't feel like, and this was even like this is pre-Instagram, right?
Mhm.
So we didn't even have that problem and still the imposter syndrome was real. But, you know, yeah,
I'm not witchy
I was
enough.
so busy and I was so like I'm just not connected to my practice. That yeah, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like I loved practicing. That will always be like something that was important to me.
Mhm.
But I didn't feel the like pull to go back to it. Um, and then in 2015, I lost my home in a wildfire.
Oh.
Mm.
And it was about 6, 8 months after the fire that I really came back to my practice. And it was May of 2016. I had this whole funny thing that happened. My best friend and I were living in an apartment that we actually lived in for many years. But you know, we didn't own anything because I'd lost everything in the fire. And so we just had a lot of like hand-me-downs and things that people had really graciously given us. But we didn't have anything that was ours. And so we were
Mhm.
finally like starting to try to decorate the house and like make it our own. And there was a craft store that was going out of business. And so they kept having like bigger and bigger sales. And so we were going in there and, you know, getting stuff for the house, you know, decorations or candles, whatever. And I found this poster it was like a antique style, like palmistry poster, and which is really funny. Like I've never practiced palmistry. I still have the poster. I still don't practice it. But nonetheless, for whatever reason, I just felt really like called to this poster. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can find a frame for it because it was pretty large.
Mhm.
And I told myself I had this like little negotiation in the store. I was like, if I can find a frame that fits it, then I will take it home. And so I like walked to the back of the store where the framing department had been. The store was like practically gutted at this point, and there was like 5 frames leaning against the shelf that were left, and one of them fit the poster. And so I
Wow.
took it home and I still have it hanging. It's still right here next to my desk.
Cute.
And it just kind of got me curious, you know, about like maybe that is something that I want to go back to. And so I remember that I just like Googled something, you know, modern witchcraft or something. I have no idea what I Googled. I
Mm-mm.
Googled something, and in the like 2.5 years since I had been practicing, so much had changed.
Yeah.
So many books had come out. Like things were more normalized, really, than they had been, literally even 2 years prior.
Mhm.
And so I decided I was going to start practicing again. And I started a blog that was really just like a personal, you know, way to hold myself accountable. And I've been practicing really ever since.
What's your blog?
It was The Witch of Lupin Hollow.
Okay.
Where does this name come from?
So it's not like it is a reference, but it's a made up reference, but it is a tribute, I guess, more accurately to my favorite childhood book, Miss Rumphius.
Oh,
Which
cute.
is it's just like a like really tiny like picture book, but it's this really beautiful story about this woman who it seems like it's like maybe like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And when she's a little girl, her grandfather tells her that he wants her to do 3 things in her life. He wants her to see the world, he wants her to travel, he wants her to live by the sea, they live by the ocean, and he wants her to do one thing to make the world more beautiful. And so the book is about like
Mhm.
her life, and she travels and she does all these things. And then when she's older, she gets sick and she's in bed and she's like contemplating what her grandfather told her. And she's like, I still don't think I've ever done anything to make the world more beautiful. And so she
Mm.
gets like a seed catalog in the mail, and she orders she gets this idea and she orders like a bulk bag of lupin seeds. And when she's better, she goes out on her bike and she starts spreading the lupin seeds everywhere she goes. And the story is actually told from the perspective of her niece. And so in the story, she's old and she's been doing this for years. And so people call her the Lupin Lady.
How cute.
Cute.
I've
Oh
never
my
heard of that. I
God.
love that.
It's my favorite book. And I came
How
up with the name Lupin
sweet.
Hollow many years ago. Like, I don't even know. It was just something that I always was like, someday I'm going to use that for something. And
So
then it became
cute.
my life's work. Yeah, so I
I
started
love
the
that.
blog then with no intention of it being work that I would do. It was entirely personal.
Yeah, what were you sharing on the blog? Like what kind of topics and
Excuse me.
things?
I was mostly writing about kind of like my practices that I was creating for myself at the time. A lot of the things that I was starting to create were kind of around accountability and like being consistent and sticking with my practice. And so I remember I was writing a lot about like journaling and grimoires and that sort of practice, which is still an important part of my practice now. And along that, so people always say, "Oh, when did you first, really get into astrology?" And I'm like, I don't know. It was somewhere in that same window that I first really learned about more of my chart and first
Mhm.
learned about my moon and then about the rest of my chart. But I really don't know. I'm like, I don't know if I got a reading or where I came across that information. Like that is
Wow.
lost to history, I guess. But yeah, I did learn about my moon at that time, which was really profound. And the moon in, working with the moon phases had always been a part of my practice. So that felt really resonant and
Mhm.
relevant. And so at that time, like 2016, like a lot of parts of what my practice looked like have continued to look like, really kind of like clicked into place. And so I was writing about a lot of those kinds of things. And I was making like my own tea blends and that sort of thing. So like really low key herbalism. And then in 2018, I had started to make. I was doing some like small readings and making little courses and workbooks and just like really small things though. And then in 2018, I put out my first like major course, which was called Self Care Sorcery. And it was all about like how to create your own rituals and practices that really work for you and that were really holistic and supportive. And it was the first time that I like created something that was larger and that really landed for people. Like a lot of people signed up for it. And it was the following year in 2019 that I actually, through a series of events, I ended up leaving my full-time job and I started working more significantly on my business. And I wrote my first book that was published at the end of 2020. So a
What was
lot
your
of things
book?
kind of unfolded in that period. And I've
Snowballing.
been full-time doing astrology and mentorship and priestess work since 2020.
What was the name of your book?
My first book was The Modern Witch's Guide to Magical Self-Care. I have 3
Cute.
books out.
What else are they?
There's The Modern Witch's Guide to Natural Magic is the second one. That one's my favorite.
Cute.
And then the third book is called Botanical Cocktails.
I feel like I have that book in my
Really?
shop. I think I might.
That's so
Amazing.
crazy.
Yeah.
We'll have to look.
Cool.
Okay, so take us through where you are today and how your work shows up for you and how you're using it.
Yeah. So I did a lot of my work for many years was around those kinds of topics, was around like how to be consistent with your practice. That was something that I had struggled with, right? It was why I
Right.
had
That's
stopped
what I
practicing
struggle. Yeah.
like all the way back. And it was something that I saw so many of my clients struggling with. And so that was something that I talked about for many years and how to create your own rituals, how to have daily rituals, like all that sort of thing. A lot of my books are about like that was a big focus for a very long time. And then a lot of things changed in my life about 3 years ago. So my long term partner and I split up rather dramatically.
Mm.
And I kind of went on my own journey around relating and sexuality and things like that. And in the last 3 years, 2.5 to 3.5 years ago now, I really went deep into exploring like my own sexuality and coming out as bi, which I had always kind of known that I was, but I was in a long-term monogamous relationship with a man. So it felt like a moot
Mm,
point.
mhm.
And so I like started to really explore that part of myself as well as like relationship style. So my ex and I our breakup was very dramatic. And
Mm.
the short version, the like Cliff Note version that I tell people is that he left me for someone in our friend group, which is essentially true. It's just the, very condensed version of the story.
Yeah.
And part of the longer version is that before we broke up, several months before we broke up, he had come to me and asked if I would ever be open to opening our relationship. And I knew that he meant for this particular person. And I was very clear that I was not okay with it. But I was very open to the actual idea of opening our relationship, which he was really shocked by. And so that sort of like planted this seed that after we broke up, I was like, actually, that is something that I want to explore. And so I went on this whole journey that is ever unfolding around being poly and being part of sex positive communities and things like that, which has been really wonderful and like really transformational in so many ways, and has really come into my work. And it's been so interesting because when I really, about a year and a half ago, when I first really started bringing some of the pleasure work into what I do, which is now a big focus for me, I realized that it had always been a part of my own practice. Pleasure in general, like I always say now, like the when it's true, the first spell I ever cast when I was 18 was a solo sex magic spell.
Yeah.
And I just never talked about that. It was just never something that I brought into conversation. It was never something I brought into my work. But it had always been a part of my own practice. And so that just sort of like came up to the surface and was like, hey, like I've always been here. You've just never paid any attention to me. And so that was an interesting journey too, on like my own spirituality side, to realize that there was this part of myself and part of my practice that I had been like so silent about. And so doing a lot of like uncovering that, in the last couple of years. But now the pleasure work has become a really forefront of my work. I did the like be consistent with your daily rituals stuff I did for like almost a decade. And I got to a point where I was like, I don't think I have anything left to say about this. Like it's
Yeah.
thing, but like I don't think I have anything left. Go read the book, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so now I'm doing really like the pleasure work and priestess work. But it's so funny because I feel like I've kind of like circled back around in so many ways. Astrology is always a foundational part of whatever I'm doing, really understanding like how we are individually coded and wired and how, what's natural for us. So the astrology is still very much a part of it. And, I've like come back to, not that I ever stopped working with the moon by any means, but I've like really come back to teaching on the moon phases again, in a way that I hadn't in a long time. And, I definitely think that we have these like really interesting cycles where it's like we evolve and we transform and we become like completely new versions of ourselves, but there's always these pieces that are always true. So my work and my life looks very different than it did, especially to people from the outside looking in, even a few years ago. But I think at the end of the day, like the core root of what I do has always been the same.
Yeah. What does it look like for someone to work with you?
So most of my work is in groups. So I have like a membership where which is aligned with the moon phases. So every week at each moon phase, I do a training, like an audio with a transcript. And depending on what moon phase it is, we focus on either shadow work, pleasure work, or intuitive work. And then I have kind of like, more and more intimate, deeper and deeper containers from there. I also teach astrology. So I have an astrology certification as well. And I'm actually getting ready later this year. I'm going to be putting out a new program. So first, I've said this to clients. I haven't said this anywhere. Like, we're
Cool.
doing it. I'm putting out a new priestess certification as well, because like ritual work has become, again, has always been there, but has become more and more important in what I do with clients. So I have some certifications where I teach people kind of how to do what I do. But most of my work is in, working with like coven style groups.
That's so amazing. I'm always so impressed by people that can like work from home so efficiently and like create all these things just from their brain and offer it to other people. You're doing so many things and you're offering so many things, and it really is like very inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's funny you say it that way because for the last 5 years, I rented an office space because I do not find that working from home is very
Mm.
conducive to working
Such a
effectively. But as of
distraction.
like the last month, I am officially working from home again. So we're
Okay.
figuring it out.
Yeah, you're like, you have office hours. See, my brain would need that. I would need to be like, I know like this is my job and I get to make up all the rules, but like from this time to this time, I'm working.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
We are in the middle of so much crazy stuff astrologically, like all the transits and stuff. Could you speak on that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2025 was the single craziest year I think we've ever had astrologically, like as humans. Like it was absolutely insanely intense. And what made it so intense is that really between November 2024 and July 2025, so about 8 months, 9 months, every single planet changed signs, which is essentially unheard
Yeah.
of for them all to sync up like that, mostly because, some planets change signs every couple months or every couple weeks even, but most of the planets change signs every 1 to 20 years, basically. And so there are certain planets that are always changing signs, right? Mercury and Venus, they're changing signs like every month. And we're used to that, right? We know what that feels like. We've experienced each of those planets in every single sign every year for at least a couple weeks, right? So those are things that we have like energetic muscle memory for. But the planets that change signs less frequently, we have less and less muscle memory for. And so like Jupiter changes signs every year. That's normal, right? So it's like Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, they're going to be doing their thing every year. That's normal. But the rest of the planets move much more slowly. And so Saturn only changes signs once every 3 years. And then the outer planets, it's 8 to 20 years. And in that period from November 2024 to July 2025, every single planet changed signs and every single planet was retrograde. Like
Yeah.
literally. For a few weeks out of that entire period, like we got hit with absolutely everything. And so that is a lot of experiences that we don't have that muscle memory for, right? Like we didn't know what it felt like for Neptune to be in Aries. Literally no one alive had ever experienced that before March of last year. Um and it wasn't just one thing, right? Like it's normal for once every couple of years to have a transit like that, but it's not normal to have all of them happening simultaneously. And so 2025 was this massive year of transition and like just sort of previewing what the future was going to feel like. And it was mostly a preview because most of those planets, yeah.
Get me
I
out
feel
of
you.
here.
Most of those planets didn't stay where they were. So Pluto moved into Aquarius in November 2024. It had been kind of like dancing in and out of Capricorn and Aquarius for a couple of years at that point. So Pluto stuck around. But Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus, all three of them, they moved forward into a new sign and then they moved back into the sign that they had been in for a long time. And so by the end of 2025, most of the planets were back where they had started the year at. And so we got this preview of like 3 to 6 months, depending on the planet, of what the new energy would be like, but we weren't really like fully settled in it yet, right? We still had loose ends to tie up. And now everybody has moved forward except for Uranus, but that's happening later this week. So at the end of April, Uranus moves forward into Gemini, and then everybody will be where it's going to be going forward pretty much. We still have a couple of other big transits happening later in the year, like summer into fall. But it's just like not remotely on the scale of what we saw in 2025. And so to me, it's like 2026 for a long time has been touted as like the big year because it's when Saturn and Neptune were settling into Aries and staying there, which is absolutely significant. Like this is a very significant year cosmically. But 2025, I think, was the year that we experienced it the most chaotically because we didn't know what it was going to feel like. This time when they moved forward and they stayed in Aries, we already had at least some idea of what that would feel like. And so, yeah, I think that 2025 was like the most just chaotic, crazy year of like not knowing what anything was going to feel like or, how it was going to feel in our bodies, how it was going to feel in our field, what was going to happen, right? Like we didn't have that sense of like, oh, well, when, this planet is in this sign, like that's how we tend to experience it collectively. We were looking back 80 to 250 years to get a sense of what those transits might look like.
I like how you describe it as like muscle memory.
Same.
Like that, I've never heard anyone say it like that. And I'm like, oh yeah, that totally make sense. Like our bodies are like,
And, like, feeling it.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
Totally. Yeah, I've always used that analogy because I think it's just so accurate
yeah,
that it's
really.
like, if you've never experienced a transit in your lifetime, you don't know what it feels like, right? I think it's a really tangible way to think of astrology. But now we have the muscle memory and we are actually kind of settled into, pretty much all of these new transits. There's some things that will be happening later in the year. Chiron will move forward for the
Mhm.
first time in a long time into Taurus. So that's a big one.
Mhm.
But it's just like we're much more settled and like, okay, this is the new normal, and this is kind of like what the new era feels like.
I think it's interesting because, like, I know both Taylor and I have experience. We've seen it a lot in our own community of friends and stuff, but like collectively, the energy is like so intense and fucked up. But like personally, a lot of us have had some like
Beautiful.
really beautiful
Huge.
energies too, like on a personal level, and like new things coming online, new parts of our lives unfolding that are like so beneficial and awesome. Like what would you say about that astrologically speaking? Because I think that is true for a lot of people. And I think being in a chaotic world when everything is so fucked up, it's like we feel kind of guilty also celebrating our personal beauty in life, even though we know like joy is a part of the revolution and sharing those joys is really important as well. Like, do you have anything that comes to mind or that you would share about that, especially considering the astrology and sharing the muscle memory piece of us like settling into that energy?
Yeah, totally. I mean, with the like settling in aspect of it, with some of these transits, they're really long-term transits. So especially Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? So Pluto will be in Aquarius until the 2040s. Neptune will be in Aries until the 2040s. Uranus will be in Gemini until I think it's the mid 2030s. So these are really long-term transits,
Mhm.
right? And they are really big deal transits.
Mhm.
But the middle of those transits is when we kind of feel them the least, right? When Pluto's been in Aquarius for 10 years, it's gonna be like, yeah, it's just like everyday life,
Yeah.
right? But at the beginning and at the end of a transit, when that planet is actually shifting from one sign into the next and from this one into the one after it, right? That's when we feel it the most.
Mhm.
And so I think that's one of the reasons why this has been such a chaotic period is we've had so many things that are changing
Yeah.
all at the same time, right? And so it's like, yes, it's the muscle memory piece of like, we don't know what this feels like, but it's also this transitional piece, right?
Mhm.
Where it's like, oh, we're in the period where the most things are changing
Mhm.
for the most people.
Mhm.
And it's also true that it has so much to do with our own charts,
Right.
right? Like I have actually a lot of clients who have absolutely nothing in Aries. Like these Aries transits that are such a big deal collectively really are not as much of a big deal for them personally. But what those planets are bringing up for those clients is something that's much more internal or much more under the surface,
Mhm.
right? Than it is for someone like me who has everything in
Mhm.
Aries and is getting hit one after the other.
Mhm.
It's just a completely different experience. And I think that understanding that like the collective impact of these really long-term transits like this can be interrelated, of course, but also very different than our individual personal experience of them. I think that like massive collective change can be obviously really destabilizing,
Yeah.
really disruptive, but it also sometimes gives us an opportunity to decide that we're going to do things differently ourselves too. And I think I'm definitely seeing that. Like it's definitely been true in my life, but I see it in so many people around me who are just like, oh, like if the world is falling apart and there are no rules, what if I just live my life the way that I want to?
Yeah.
Word. Yeah.
And I think that is like one of the core like kernels of wisdom from these, especially the Aries and Aquarius transits that are just like, yeah, the world is really fucked up and it's going to keep being fucked up and it's probably going to get more so before it gets better.
Right.
But we also still have like our own autonomy within that structure.
Mhm. That's
Ugh,
beautiful. I
yeah.
like that.
I really need Do you do like year ahead readings for people?
So I don't do a lot of readings. I have like one small like one-off reading on
Mhm.
my website. Mostly I like my main group is called the Starlight Coven, and it's a like fairly small group. We usually have like 15 to 20 people in there, and we have like all the things like those are my clients who get access to everything.
Mhm.
I have summits a couple times a year that they get access to and all the things, but we also are always like all up in their chart. And which is my favorite, to like, well, I love doing a blind chart reading where I'm like, I know nothing about this person. I'm going to look at their chart.
Mhm.
But my favorite is definitely like to work long term with clients and be with them through these transits.
Mhm.
So I don't do a ton of individual readings, but I usually end up doing something, at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
This year I did like it was like a bundle about some of the big transits that were all happening right at the start of the year. And it had like a class on eclipses and a like workbook on working with Mercury retrograde and a couple of something about Neptune. It had like horoscopes for Neptune, and then people could add on a reading with it too. So I always end up doing something, but
Mhm.
it's
I love the name Starlight Coven. That's so cute. I was
thank
just
you.
saying before we hopped on this, like, I just need like a year ahead reading with someone. And I mean, we have lots of options from having this podcast and we have like a witchy event company. But I just feel like, yeah, everything feels hectic and chaotic. And I'm also like very luteal today. So I'm like all up in my feels, questioning my entire life. But I'm like, maybe the stars will just tell me what I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest things to look at this year is like what house and planets you have Aries in,
I don't think
what
I
house and planets you have Gemini
do.
in, and to some extent, what
Aries is
house
in your
and
second house, Taylor, which is your house of money.
How do you
Mhm.
know all this stuff about me?
Because you're Pisces rising and your rising starts your house.
Mhm.
So I know that that's your first house, which means Aries is your second house, which has to do with your money. And there's been literally every fucking planet almost in Aries this past couple of weeks, months or so.
Literally,
Yeah.
April has been literally more Aries than we've ever experienced,
Yeah.
not just in our lifetime, but in human history.
And Aries is like impulsive and like, I want it now and let's fucking go. So everything that you're experiencing makes perfect sense to me from the little I know about astrology.
Oh, that's crazy. Okay. Well, that's the only thing I have right there.
I
And
love
then
that.
on the line, I have my IC on Gemini, but it's like right on the line.
Yeah, so it depends on the house system you use. So there's some like little intricacies with astrology.
Mm-hmm.
So the system I use is called whole signs houses. It's
Yeah.
like the oldest system, it's the simplest
Yeah.
system, which just puts one whole sign in each house. And so if the IC is in Gemini, like the IC would be in Gemini,
Mm-hmm.
period, but
Mm-hmm.
it could be in either the third or the fourth, or sometimes even the fifth house, depending on where you were born. But then other house systems divide the houses based on the angles themselves, which is
Mm-hmm.
the ascendant and directly across from it, and the midheaven and the IC going up and down. So there are different ways of calculating the chart. But if you have Pisces rising, I would put Gemini in your fourth
It says
house.
fourth. What does
Um,
that mean for me right now?
so the fourth house is like home and family and safety and things like that, which Uranus going into is like big changes. Travel.
Talks.
You're right on track. There
I'm
you
about to start
go.
crying.
You don't need a year ahead. You know exactly where you're at right now, and everything's playing out perfectly.
I'm just more confused.
This will pass. It's just a transit.
Yeah, well, and some of my favorite things about astrology is like with the transits is that it really reminds us that like nothing lasts forever.
Yep.
Everything shifts and changes, and sometimes it's a really long term change,
Mm-hmm.
but no transit lasts forever. And also like in our own charts that it just really and in the transits too that astrology just really gives us permission to like be where we are. Like
Exactly.
if we're having a transit that is really heavy or intense in some way, it's like yeah, like that's the season that I'm in.
Yeah.
Or if we have a part of our charts that we struggle with, I as I mentioned, like I first really learned about my moon, and what that was the thing that really got me into astrology. And my moon is something that I really struggle with. Like it represents a part of me that I used to have a really hard time with, and I still sometimes, because like our shadows never really they never fully shift. They never fully go away. And, when I really started to embrace that part of myself and that part of my chart, like when I learned about that part of my chart, I remember being so resistant and just like, no, but like that's the thing I don't like about myself. What do you mean that's that's like in there, And the more that I really just like leaned into that and embraced it, it was like, oh, like you get to just have permission to be who you are and be
Mm,
where you are, which I think is probably why astrology is always present. Like no matter
right.
what flavor of work I'm doing, like it just always is this like guiding factor for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really love astrology. I've always been an astrology girly, reading my horoscopes and, Cosmopolitan magazine and all of that stuff like growing up. But it wasn't really until like the last maybe 4 or 5 years where I'm like really started understanding astrology better and like honestly having this podcast and talking to a lot of different astrologers and learning a little bit by little, it's like it's starting to click more and my love the transits. Like, and as you were saying, like it does just give you that permission slip to be where you are. And it feels so important, like in such an important way. Like we're all so affected by the planets shifting. We're all so affected by the moon changing regularly. Like, and if we can just start to understand even a little bit about what those transits mean, even if it's not to your own personal chart, but just on a collective level, I think it gives me so much peace, like in the moment of like, okay, this all makes sense because Saturn's in Aries and this is happening and I can breathe because this is just a moment in time and soon things will settle and we'll feel good again.
Isn't it all a little weird?
It's so wild, but it's like undeniable too.
Totally. But it's like, what do you mean that when a planet moves around, I have feelings? And like, what do you mean? That's crazy.
Well, I mean, there is the science of the moon and it changing the tides of the ocean, and we are
That's still weird.
so
That's
watery
crazy.
beings. And so if the moon can do that to the big ass fucking ocean, like why do we think we're going to be unaffected? And if the moon could do that, then of course all the other planets could do that too.
That's just crazy.
It is crazy. And it's also the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I do love to do a blind chart reading where I don't know anybody and don't know anything about the person, and then just go into the chart and just intuitively, it's both a language that I speak very fluently and it's a very
Right.
intuitive art as well. And it's always so fascinating, what you can like pull out of the chart about someone, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
their transits and something they've been going through or, just
Mm-hmm.
what's in their birth chart, because it is crazy. It is absolutely crazy.
What's your favorite like point or planet or asteroid or house? Like, do you have a favorite thing that you're like, I always want to see this in someone's chart, or that you feel like very passionate about?
Well, so it does kind of depend on like what we're looking at, like there's different things that I'm going to go look at specifically. But I do love to work with the goddess asteroids, and
Mm-hmm.
with Black Moon Lilith. Like I think that they just add so much nuance to the chart. In traditional astrology, and even this isn't totally accurate, but in traditional astrology, like technically the only like quote unquote feminine planets are Venus and the moon, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't actually entirely true because Saturn is actually very feminine in a lot of ways.
Mm.
But the god Saturn is a god.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just like it's very patriarchal, right? Like there's just a
Right.
lot missing links and missing pieces. And I absolutely work with traditional astrology and, always kind of take the tradition into account.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think that layering in the asteroids, layering in like more feminine energy, it's like it's present in the chart. We just don't typically look at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is really powerful and really helpful. I also, one of the things I love about the asteroids is that they're so specific, right? Like they don't necessarily tell us a lot about like who this person is in terms of like their personality and how they show up in their daily life. But they do tell us, unless they're, depending on where they are in the chart. But for most of us, like the asteroids are so much more subtle and nuanced than that. And they tell us these like really subtle, specific things about how we move in certain parts of our lives, especially around like ritual and spirituality and relationships and things like that, that we just don't like. You can see in other parts of the chart, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
would never look at an asteroid over Venus, for example, right? Like Venus is always going to be more important, but I think that they add so much like subtlety and a lot of just like beauty, I think, to the chart.
What's your favorite thing about Black Moon Lilith? Why do you think that's a really important one?
So I work with Lilith a lot for two different, very interrelated purposes. So I talk a lot about like pleasure and shadow being like
Mhm.
really two sides of the same coin. And that to me, like for one thing, I think we have the most shadows collectively about pleasure,
Yep.
especially like to the point that we don't even realize it.
Yeah.
We're so repressed as a society.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
So Lilith tells us a lot about that, right? She tells us a lot about our shadows, especially around things like pleasure and sexuality and like women's empowerment and things like that. But also on the flip side, I think that pleasure also is such an important part of shadow work. You know, I think
Mhm.
when we try to go into the dark and like feel our feelings and experience our grief and all of that without any like source of pleasure or joy, like it's both not very effective and
Yeah.
we're also going to get really stuck there.
Yeah.
And so I work with Lilith both around like our shadow self and like your inner witch and what your witchcraft practice looks like and like all of that kind of thing, but also on the pleasure and sexuality side as well. You know, I think she's like Venus is great for pleasure in the chart. Mars is the like traditional, this is your sexuality in the chart, which I don't really work with as much at all. I just think that it's like a little overdone. I think it absolutely tells you I'm gonna get, like, smacked for saying that, but, like, absolutely, it tells you so much about that part of yourself and, like, your passion and your drive, but it's not where I go for, like, your actual sexual pleasure and expression, you know?
Mhm.
For me, that's completely Lilith because Lilith is this really repressed part of the chart, you know, it's
Yeah.
usually the part of it that's been told is way too much and is, you know, too emotional and too expressed and too all these different things. And like that to me is where our sexuality really lies.
Mhm.
I love
Okay.
that.
I was laughing at myself. You asked about Lilith, and I was just like,
Yes.
yes,
Well,
we
I
love
feel
it.
like this is a really good segue into talking more about the work that you're doing and how it all shows up because she's a beautiful dark goddess.
Definitely. Yes. Yeah. You know, it's so funny because like the pleasure work really, like it emerged in my life, it emerged in my work. I really was not planning for it at all.
Yeah.
Particularly in my work, like, it was something that, you know, I was really exploring in my own life, not even really specifically in my spirituality because I
Mhm.
think it had just like I said, it had always been there.
Mhm.
But, yeah, it was like it really just felt like it dropped out of the sky in my work, you know, I, like, did a couple of classes that were just supposed to be one-offs, and I realized how much I loved talking about it, and then, you know, I started like one of the things that happened was I was teaching a class about witch wounds.
Mhm.
And I was teaching that there are like kind of 5 main witch wounds, and one of them is around pleasure.
Mhm.
And I was doing these little polls. I was just, it was, I don't think it was a free class, but it was like a low, you know, it was just like a ticket for the single class. And I was promoting it and I was doing these little polls on like Instagram and in my client group and whatever, just asking people like, you know, which of these different wounds resonates most with you?
Mm.
And in every single place, pleasure was at the bottom of the list. People were like, "Oh no, I don't have any issues around that." And I was like, "So full of shit. What are you
Yeah.
talking about?" Like that's the thing we all have issues with. And like it was only like a small part of the class. Like it wasn't supposed to be the main topic, but I just got really fired up about this like realization that I was like, you know, a couple years ago, I probably would have said the same thing that, like, yeah, like, that's not a thing that I really have a lot of issues with. You know, like, my ex and I had a good sex life. Like, I felt good about that part of myself. I didn't realize how much I hadn't explored. And I was like, doing those quizzes, I got really fired up about it, just being like, oh, this is something that we don't even realize we're not giving ourselves, you know,
Mhm.
we're not even realizing that we have these wounds around. And so that was kind of like part of the catalyst that in the work part of my life that really started bringing it up for me. And then, yeah, it just sort of evolved into like, oh, this is actually the work that I want to be doing in all the ways,
Mm.
which has been really exciting, scary in a lot of ways,
Mhm.
but really exciting.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
curious how like somebody could start exploring pleasure in a way that just feels really like easy and tangible, or just like
Mhm.
even if it's not, well, yes, in sexuality, but just in everyday life, like different ways to explore pleasure.
Totally. Yeah. So one of the things that I teach is that there's like 3 main forms of pleasure, which is comfort, sensuality, and eroticism. And it's funny because it's like on the one hand, we go to the extremes, right? It's like we either go straight to the eroticism,
Mm-hmm.
or we try really hard to like downplay it and be like, no, pleasure is so many other things. And it's like, yes, pleasure is so many other things. And also it's
And
sex. And it's like we can like hold that spectrum if we let ourselves, you know? And so I think that stepping into those three different types individually is really helpful and makes it more accessible to actually kind of separate out like what are different types of pleasure and different definitions of pleasure, and like how can I like both hold space for all of them at different times or at the same time. And also like start to really discern for myself which ones I need at any given time. Because I think that, you know, comfort as a type of pleasure or as a form of pleasure is like definitely the most universal. It's something we all need, right? Like we need to feel comfortable and safe in our body. We need to feel just like grounded and cared for, especially from ourselves, you know, like that is so baseline, which is another one of the things that feels like it goes back to the beginning of my work, right? Like 10 years ago, I was talking
yeah.
about self care. And at the end of the day, like that is one of the things that we need to give ourselves. And like, I think that starting to see that as pleasure, you know, of like, oh, I'm going to take a hot shower, or, you know, I'm going to go to bed early and get an extra hour of sleep, or whatever comfort looks like on any given day, you know, and starting to see that as something that's intentional and that is a type of pleasure, I think is really like rewiring because we don't think of it that way. But I actually think the one that we like have the most like weirdness about is actually sensuality,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of times we either conflate like sensual and sexual, or we just don't have like a really working definition for what sensual pleasure is. And so to me, it's really about like engaging our senses
Mm-hmm.
and the ways that that gets us into our bodies, you know, and like I'm someone who struggles with chronic illness, who has body stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't always feel good in my body and I don't always trust my body, you
Yeah.
know, like in a sexual context and just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, sensual pleasure, I think, is so accessible, right? Because it's like, oh, I can feel that the mug in my hands is warm, and that can be like a moment of mindfulness and comfort and connecting to my body and all of these things, right? And also, it can be kind of challenging and confronting at times if you do have a challenging relationship with your body, which I think most of us do at least some of the time.
Yeah.
But I think confronting in that kind of shadow work way, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm disconnected from my body, or I'm feeling disembodied because I have this like challenging relationship, and that's a relationship I can choose to work on, you know. And then there's also of course eroticism, which is like its own category, and can also look all different sorts of ways depending on our bodies, our orientations, what we're desiring or not, like so
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like in America, like I have so many things to say. Obviously, like leisure and relaxing and like doing all these things, like sometimes I struggle with because it makes me feel like a piece of shit, you know? Like, oh, I'm not like producing, or I'm not like cleaning, or I'm not like getting something done. And it's so like having that pleasure, like even if I'm watching a show, like I'm doing something else or like working from my phone, and it's like I do have a hard time with that part of pleasure, and I think a lot of people do. And then as far as like the eroticism part goes, like so many people have sexual trauma and don't even know what it feels like to be inside their own bodies or what they like, and the trauma could even just be from the church or society or whatever. So, yeah, I just don't know how to help people even start to explore those parts of themselves, and maybe it's just like an awareness to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the awareness piece is really like step 0 in so many ways, you know, where it's like, I mean, like with these quizzes that I did that were so innocuous, like it was just I guess poll is a better word.
Mhm.
They were polls, right? Of like, oh, just, you know, opt in, which thing resonates most with you. And the results were so surprising to me because I was already in a period where I was like already doing a lot of this work for myself. But I realized like, oh, not that long ago, I totally would have said the same thing, right? That I wasn't aware that this was something that I had not only like a lot of shadows to unpack around, but also just there was all these parts of me and things that I wasn't expressing, you know? that I totally was not conscious of, which I think is the most interesting part about it, right? It's like we can be like really repressed and have all sorts of shame and weird feelings from our society. But if we don't even know that, right?
Right.
If we're not even aware that that's like getting in our way or causing us pain or causing us, to not be fully expressed, like for one thing, obviously we're not going to do anything about it if we're not aware of it.
Mhm.
But also, I think that yeah, starting to have that awareness, even just like awareness of your body and awareness of like desire or even like the baseline comfort as sacred, as something that is like your birthright and you're worthy of getting to experience. Like there's so many layers there that we could unpack, and like not only so many layers of like shame and wounding from mostly just from society, let alone
Right.
our own individual experiences, but also so many layers of like we don't even know we don't even know how good it can be a lot of the times,
Yeah.
Well, and just what I'm thinking is not experiencing pleasure can lead to anxiety, depression, like disease, like all of these things. And it's
Mhm.
just could be so simple as just having little moments every day of joy and pleasure.
Absolutely. Well, and that's one of the reasons why like sensual pleasure to me is kind of like I talk a lot about the eroticism and I love to talk about sex magic, but like the sensuality piece I think is so like underrated because it really is so small and
Mhm.
so tangible and so accessible, It's
Mhm.
like I chose to wear this sweater because it was soft, and
Mm.
it felt good on my skin, or like I chose to have a cold drink because it was hot out and that's what I was craving, like it's these tiny little things that we will just like make all sorts of stories about and make ourselves wrong for no fucking reason. Like
Right.
Mhm.
we twist pretzels about stuff or we just don't even realize it, where it's like, maybe we did choose the sweater because it was soft, but we didn't even like stop to be like, oh, that feels nice.
That.
you
Yeah.
know?
I need a cocktail. That's what I would like for pleasure right now. I'm ready to
Totally.
cry into a cocktail. Okay, I want to keep us like on track and honor your time. So if there's any way that our listeners can find your book and work with you, I'm kind of bad at talking now, but you know what I'm
Any
saying.
last little pieces you wanna tie a
Thank
bow
you.
before we
Yeah.
head
Well,
into
so
bed?
everything's basically on my website. So my website is just lupinehollow.com and I have the shop is on there. I mean, you can also get my books at, it's been a few years since they came out, so you might have to order them from your local bookstore, but they can get them, I promise. You can get them on Amazon, or you can order them from me if you'd like a signed copy. And then, yeah, all of my programs, the astrology certification, the Starlight Coven, the membership, all of that is on the website. And then I do free summits a couple of times a year. So there's a page on my website that you can go to and you can see which ones are coming up. But the summits are like 4 days, and we have usually about 20 speakers on a particular topic. So I do them on pleasure, on shadow work, on like all of these kinds of things.
So
Awesome. And
cool.
is that all online, the summits? Or are those in person?
Yeah, they're all online
Cool.
and it's usually like there'll be 4 days of classes and you'll have a couple of days to catch up or you can upgrade. And we do these like amazing bundles that you get the replays, but you also get like meditations and workshops and all sorts of things from me and all the
Beautiful.
speakers. And they're lots of fun.
That's so awesome.
Amazing. Okay.
Okay, well, we have 2 questions that we love to ask all of our guests. And our first one is, what do you do for self-care that you just can't live without?
Oh, I love that question. Ooh, what do I do that I can't live without? Probably the biggest thing is I mean, I'm never without tea. So, like, I'm
Oh.
always making tea, and I drink, like, a lot of just black tea. I need my caffeine in the mornings, but I try to be, like, at least somewhat seasonal with my tea, which is one of my favorite, like, really simple, accessible ways to, like, have a warm beverage and also, work with the seasons. So I'm
Mhm.
drinking like more spices in the fall and winter and more floral in the spring and summer, that sort of thing. But also there's so many little things. I mean, I would definitely also say like absolutely working with the moon and like knowing where the moon is, what sign it's in, and like how that shows up in my chart.
Yeah.
Like the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. And I think that understanding how that affects your own energy is like one of the most important things you could possibly do for yourself self-care wise.
Yeah,
On
cool.
it.
Love it.
If you could tell your younger self at any point one thing, what would it be?
Oh my gosh. So I just moved, as I think I mentioned that I just moved. Or I'm working from home. That's why that's why I'm working from home, is because I moved. And so a couple of weeks ago, I was like living out of boxes and unpacking everything. And I was finally getting to my office. And I was like, you know what? I had like an hour. And I was like, I'm just going to unpack like books and journals onto the bookshelves just to like, that will get a bunch of boxes out of here. And of course, I ended up like sitting on the floor in my new office reading old journals, because that's what you do. And so I was reading from these journals from like 2016, 2017, in those couple of years, like right after the fire, right when I started Lupin Hollow. I had a partner who was really significant at that time. Like there was just a lot of things. Like it was a very significant era. And I was reading from these journals, just being like, one, like I'm the person I've always been. Like I was writing down, I've been doing this like self-devotion series recently, and I was like writing down about like wanting to be more devoted to myself. And I was like, some things literally fucking never change. But also, I was so just like really kind of like touched and like had all of this compassion for me 10 years ago, who just like wanted to break out of the box and like wanted to live this really different life. And I didn't know what that meant or what that looked like. And I think like if you had told me then like what my life was going to look like now, I think you could have like knocked me over. But like
Why am I going to
it was
cry?
so
It's so beautiful.
like I was like there. I was just like I just had
Wow.
all this compassion for my younger self, just being like,
Yeah.
you're gonna get there. Like you don't know what it's gonna mean, but you're gonna get there.
I love that. Yeah, I love looking at old journals, and as you're talking, I'm like, man, I've just like made myself so busy that like that was such an important part of my self-care was journaling, and I tell everyone to journal all the time, and I have like fallen so far behind away from journaling myself.
Yeah, I was
Um,
thinking about all of the journals I had that
yeah.
got stolen whenever my
Mm.
U-Haul trailer got stolen and stuff. But I mean, your,
No.
house burned down, so same, but way worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Losing it all.
Okay.
No, but losing everything like that is just it's a particular thing. You go looking for stuff years later and you're like, I don't have that.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah, we, my husband and I, when we first got together, we like moved to St. Louis for 8 months and then we moved back. And when we were moving back, we had a U-Haul trailer that was just like the most important stuff that we were like, okay, this is coming with. And it got stolen while we were like asleep at a hotel. And it was like family heirlooms and I don't know, TVs and guns and just tools and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so all my clothes, like I had collected like beautiful clothing that I had to start all over and stuff. So I feel that it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my journals only go back to 2016
Right.
because
right.
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah.
so I'm like, that's as far back as I could go. I would love to read things from when I was younger, but that's a very significant
Mm-hmm.
marker. And yeah, that version of me, I was like,
Well, and
oh,
how
it's gonna
beautiful
be
to
okay.
see like how much has changed in 10 years too. Like to even be able to look back, like, we do like inner child work and we think a lot about like our literal child self, but like even 10 years ago when I was 30, like that's still inner child work.
Yeah.
Even
Totally.
though she was a
Totally.
full-on married adult.
Mm-hmm. Of course. We would be honored if you would pull a card for us.
Oh, yes.
I'm gonna say it's for me
Okay,
because I need it right now. I'm going through it today, and it's just getting worse as the hours go on. What is happening up there? Help.
Uranus is sitting at 29 degrees of Taurus. It'll be over in a couple days.
I'm
I
a
promise.
Scorpio. Shouldn't that be like good for me? Scorpios love Taurus. Taurus don't love Scorpios. That's how I feel.
Well, I have the Beltane Oracle here. It's the
Oh,
Oh,
one I've been
yay.
using.
What
yay.
on theme for us today?
Let's see what we need. Oh,
No.
I swear I shuffled. We pulled the orgasm card. Yes, please. It's also card number 29, which feels relevant for Uranus.
29 degrees.
Whoa.
I love that. I feel like So it's the Beltane Oracle, right? So it's all very Taurus themed. And I feel like, so I'm doing a class series next week from when we're recording this about sex magic and pleasure and all of that. And one of the things that I'm talking about is like using pleasure and yes, orgasm, like as an offering. And like the title of the class is Orgasmic Offerings. And like the first thing I'll say in the class is that like it's not actually about orgasm, right? It's about like pleasure of all kinds. But we think of that as something that we can use as an offering, right? Like that's kind of a typical sex magic thing that we'll talk about. But it's really not just about like an offering even to the earth or the universe or spirit or goddess or whatever. It's also really like an offering to yourself. You know, like it really is, whether you reach orgasm or not, any kind of pleasure you give yourself is this like really profound offering to say like, hey, like I took this, 5 minutes or 20 minutes or hour or whatever to give myself something. And I think that it can also be offering to, your guides or your goddess that you work with or whatever. And that can also be a really profound practice. And that'll be something I'll be talking about too. But yeah, I think that just considering pleasure as an offering to yourself is something that we could all do more of.
Yeah.
I agree.
There you go, Taylar. More pleasure is what you need.
I have a toddler. Like, I don't really know.
Maybe that cocktail that you can cry into.
Well, so like I'm a hairstylist as well, and my whole day canceled tomorrow, and I'm not using that to go parent or be a part of my household. I am using that part of my day to self-care and do whatever I need. I'm gonna go
Good for you.
do whatever the fuck I want.
Perfect.
Yeah. I might go thrifting,
Absolutely.
go lay on the red light therapy bed. I might go to, I don't know, soak somewhere. I'm just gonna do something.
Ooh, I love that for you. Very timely after this conversation.
Mhm.
I love it. Yes, do that.
Thank
Yes.
you. I will. I'll try. I tried to fill it, but nobody wanted it. So.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tenae. This was amazing. We're so grateful for your time and your energy and all your magic that you've provided.
If you're ever up this way, too, let us know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I am sometimes. So
Okay.
Great.
the next time I'm up there.
Amazing.
Wonderful.
All right.
Okay. Well, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
This episode has been produced by my husband, Curtis Burgess.
Make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Waking Up the Witch.
And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at wakingupthewitch@gmail.com.
And don't forget to head over to the link in our bio on Instagram for all the ways to connect with both Amber and Taylar. And go to moonbeeswellness.com for all your self-care and witchy needs.
We love you. Bye.
Bye.
Ow.